You're listening to the sports page on the Peak One Sports Network. I'm Ashton Nix, sitting with me here as always, Chris, Rob. You know, a lot of times we talk about the coaching carousel, NFL, in college football, usually when there's a lot of turnover in the head coaching position. But it seems like this offseason for the NFL, we're talking about a QB carousel.
Oh yeah.
And at least with the premium quarterbacks, it seems like there's going to be a lot of turnover this year, going into next year, anyways. Um, what's been? I mean, this whole week has been kind of crazy with a lot of moves, a lot of potential moves going on. What's kind of been the biggest move or rumor or trade that you've seen so far this week or this offseason involving a
Uh,
quarterback?
I think the rumor that Lamar is not going to be back with the Ravens.
Yeah.
That's that's pretty big, especially since he's a former MVP and things like that. And um, I'm not sure. Like I'm not the biggest Lamar Jackson fan by any means. I think he's extremely talented. I think he's a franchise quarterback and should be re-signed and earns every dollar. But um, yeah, that's big though. Like that's just where is he going to end up? Will he be back? Will he go to? Um, I forgot what team he was. Is a team he was rumored to go to, but yeah, that's it's shocking to me, really.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were teams that came out and said they're not interested, which is kind of weird to me. Why would you come out and say that if,
Right.
like, who cares? I think one of the rumors might have been Washington, and I think they were one of the teams that said they're not interested. But uh, I think that's one that can kind of screw up everything. But yeah, let's start with Lamar Jackson. Uh, Obviously, the Ravens put a non-exclusive tag on him, which is kind of weird. This I don't know how often this is being used in the NFL, but it's never really been used on a quarterback of Lamar Jackson's stature. So basically, his cap hit this year would be like $32 million if he stays with the Ravens, but he's allowed to go and negotiate with other teams. Um, and if another team wants to sign him, they get an offer together, and the Ravens have the option to match that, and he has to sign with them. If not, he signs with another team, and they have to give 2 first-round picks to the Ravens. What complicates this whole negotiation is Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent, or his mom does all that.
Right. Yeah, man, that's tough. I have a lot of Ravens fans that are friends, and they kind of view Lamar. Well, some view him on the highest level, put him on the highest pedestal. The others kind of view him how some Cowboys fans view Dak,
Yeah.
and it's like he's 1-3 in the playoffs. He has more interceptions than touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, in the playoffs, and they kind of some fans really feel like he just underperforms, and it's from the outside looking in, you see a talent, you see an MVP, you see the stats in the regular season, wins in the regular season, but yeah, maybe the GMs are they kind of are seeing what those Ravens fans are seeing, like 1-3 in the playoffs with the MVP. That's not really gonna get it done for the most part.
Yeah. Um, it, it's hard to understand what the outside world thinks of Dak. Um, Being in Dallas and being a fan of the Cowboys and somebody who follows the Cowboys, but being outside of Baltimore and knowing what the outside world thinks and knowing that uh, Lamar Jackson is a top 10 quarterback mostly because of his ability to run. Now, there are some stats out there that he's had a pretty phenomenal year in the pocket, better than a lot of other quarterbacks. And I think it's a mistake on his part to not have an agent. You get to keep more of that money, but I feel like you'd have better opportunities and potentially even more money to be made with an agent.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
overall, in the end, I think you make more money.
mhm,
But it it's an interesting thing because the non-exclusive tag has been used many times, but not, like I said, not of a player of this caliber. Uh, Honestly, I'm not sure where. I think the Ravens are gonna end up keeping him. Uh, they're having trouble negotiating with him, and according to them, his mom's kind of not working with him. So I think just all this is doing is telling him negotiate with somebody else, figure this out, and once they do the work, the other team does the work and gets a fair offer, then the Ravens will swoop in and just match the offer. And worst
yeah,
case, it's not a good offer. They get 2 first round picks for him, which
yeah.
would probably be close to the going rate if they were going to trade him anyway.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't see him going anywhere else. That would just be that's just that would probably be the wildest. I don't want to say the wildest like quarterback trade or anything like that, but that's just it's kind of bizarre because I mean he's 1-3 in the playoffs, but he's a former MVP, and I don't know. Like I mean I watched every Lamar Jackson playoff game, and
Yeah,
you know
not many
I've
of them.
yeah, not many of them. Yeah, so like I watched all four though, and I've always said like like a quarterback, it comes down to who can make the throw, and I haven't really seen him make that throw in the playoffs. Where I'm like, oh, like he can go to the playoffs and
Yeah,
out pass or out outduel Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or somebody or Joe Burrow, and I just don't see that happening. Like especially not in this passing era.
yeah. He throws up a lot of flashy stats, and he's played really well. But when you put him up against those names, Mahomes, Burrows, even Josh Allen, when you think of those classic playoff matches the last couple of years, you just don't see, or you couldn't expect Lamar Jackson to go toe to toe with them back and forth in games like that.
See it at all. I don't see it at all.
Yeah, and moving on to another quarterback, probably the news that got all of this started this past week was Derek Carr signing with the Saints. And in and of itself, it's not a big surprise. Derek Carr is right there, top. I wouldn't say all the way to maybe 8, but for sure 10 to 14 quarterback ranking somewhere in there.
Yeah,
And the Saints needed a quarterback, and they have a pretty decent team to put around him. What I thought was the story was the Raiders wanted to trade him to the Saints, and they just needed him to agree to it because he had the no trade clause. And he said no, and he goes and ends up signing with the Saints anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, big middle finger to them, but I guess the Raiders kind of screwed him over first.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I like that move though. I like Derek Carr in New Orleans. As far as like me being a fan of a team in the NFC, I'm
Yeah.
not really, but yeah, but like, I feel like he'll fit right in. He's a good quarterback. He's like you said, from like 10 to 14, from like 9, yeah, like 9 through 14 around that area. So um, I think he'll fit right in. He's better than Jameis and who was it, Taysom Hill and
Yeah.
whoever else they like. He'll fit right in, and um, I think Michael Thomas is returning with them as well, if I'm
Yeah.
not
Hey,
mistaken.
he was really
Yeah,
excited about it because he's kind of been,
yeah,
I don't know if he's really uh, been as injured as he says he is, maybe playing it up a little bit and not having a great quarterback there since Drew Brees left.
right.
But we'll see. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, he's one of those that he could throw up a 400-yard game, 4 touchdowns. And it wouldn't be a huge surprise, especially going with someone with Michael Thomas. Maybe Alvin Kamara can rejuvenate him a little bit, even see what they do in the draft. Because luckily
Mhm.
they didn't have to give up any draft capital because Carr said no to the Raiders trading him to the Saints, which I think is funny when it's not involved with the Cowboys or a team that's really affecting me. I like the chaos.
It's
I think it's
hilarious.
funny. And no hate to the Raiders, no hate to the Saints in general. I just think it's a cool, funny situation if you're not involved, if you're not a Raiders fan, I guess.
Yeah, I actually, I always just love the NFL drama, the sports drama. It's like really funny to me, and you know, I mean, he made it to a Pro Bowl this year. Like I
Yeah.
mean, so yeah, so um, I really like Derek Carr. He's actually one of my favorite players. So um, I hate that he's going to a team in the NFC, but it's definitely going to be a good fit for New Orleans.
And talking about big trades, it appears, it seems likely, but you never know because it's Aaron Rodgers. But it seems that Aaron Rodgers is going to get dealt to the Jets. Uh, the
Oh,
the
they just
Jets
say
have
something.
met with them. The Jets have met with them. The Jets are for it. The Packers are for it. They've even started saying things like the Packers, not ownership, I guess, front office staff. They don't really have real owners, real owner, but
Right.
they've said things like, "Well, we're going to bring him back and retire his number. He's going to be a Hall of Famer," things like that, which doesn't sound like something somebody would say if there was a chance at keeping him. It's all up to Aaron Rodgers and what he decides because he has to accept this, obviously. Um, and it seems like something he would want. I think what's taking a while is getting the right trade package put together. How much money are the Packers covering in this? Because his cap hits is going to be like $50 million this year. How much are
Yeah.
the Jets going to absorb? They're still, I think what they have to do is get the trade compensation there. And then once it goes through, the Jets are going to have to restructure his contract one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, that's a good team. The Jets are the Jets are really good. They got a good team to put around them. I personally don't like Aaron Rodgers, but
Yeah.
um, that would be a pretty good fit. Um, will he have more talent than he had in Green Bay? I'm not really sure. Um, Probably about the same, but
It's not going to be hard to match the receivers he's had to dealt with outside
yeah,
of Devontae Adams.
yeah. Who's with the Jets? They have Elijah Moore,
Yeah.
Corey Day. Uh,
And I assume it being in New York, he might be able to get some players to go play with him in free agency or trades or something.
yeah, for sure.
It's hard to get players to come to Green Bay,
Yeah, very
even when you're
hard. Yeah,
Aaron
but
Rodgers.
New York's an easy sell. Yeah, that would be. I mean, how many more years do you think Aaron Rodgers has though?
Um, a couple of years ago, I thought he was pretty much done. Uh,
Yeah,
last
I thought it was.
year, last year, I mean, was it a fluke year? I don't know because the same thing with Tom Brady. Is it age? Was it an off year? What was it? Uh, Aaron
I mean,
Rodgers clearly thinks he could play. I don't know. He signed that contract last offseason and he seemed like he was out the door already. I didn't think there
mhm.
was any chance he went back with the Packers, and he did. And um, I don't know. I don't know how much he has. How much draft capital are you going to give up if you're New York?
Yeah,
Because were you
yeah,
thinking even if he can kind of come back and be somewhat of himself this year, how much are you giving? How much are you
yeah.
getting
Because I
back for Aaron Rodgers?
yeah, because he's not getting past the Chiefs or the Bengals. Not with that roster. Not and I mean he just has a history of not really getting it done in the playoffs. He has a Super Bowl, yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean he's had a lot of playoff disappointment point, and I don't think he can go to Arrowhead or go to Cincinnati and get a win on the road. I just see it happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his goals are left in his career. Clearly, he'd like to win a Super Bowl, but he has the money now. He has a contract. All he has to do is say, "Hey, I'm staying in Green Bay," and collect on that. I'm sure they'll try to restructure it, but he doesn't have to do anything with it. Uh, it would be, if you're going for a title, it'd be much easier to do that in the NFC.
for
But
sure.
it seems like, I mean, everything's pointing to him going to the Jets. Now, I think it would be the most Aaron Rodgers esque move for him to say, "Never mind, I'm going to stay in Green Bay." And I think Green Bay fans will hate that. I think the Jets fans might hate that, thinking, "Hey, we were about to get Aaron Rodgers." Um, because I think Green Bay's pretty much done with them. It's starting to get not quite what happened with Favre, although they could possibly trade him to the Jets as well. They did with Favre, but he didn't really retire and come back a couple of times like Favre did. Although we thought he was done last year, and he ended up coming
Hmm.
back and signing this gargantuan contract. But I mean, I don't know. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's such an odd guy, very peculiar. You
Yeah,
don't know what's going to happen. It seems likely, yeah, he goes to the Jets, and we'll see what happens. Is Jordan Love still the Packers guy? Is Aaron Rodgers in New York enough to get them? I would say, hey, they have a decent chance at winning that division, depending on what the Bills can do. Um,
yeah,
but I think they'd be a playoff team. I mean, they were close to being a playoff team last year with
yeah.
Mike White and a plethora of quarterbacks, subpar
Yeah,
quarterbacks.
yeah, yeah. I think that they'll for sure be a playoff team. I just it's probably just like a one and done thing. They'll probably be like like the Chargers or something along that realm. Um, but I don't know. I just don't see it. Just like whenever everyone was high on Russell Wilson going to the Broncos, and I'm just
Yeah.
like that was a good move, but you saw him in the AFC West. It just wasn't enough. So um, you know,
Eh, speaking of Russell Wilson, going back, let's go with Seattle, and they're keeping Geno Smith, but signing him to, man, I didn't even think we were going to talk about him, so I don't have it in front of me. What he said, 3 year, $120 million contract,
yeah, yeah,
something like that. But it's $30 or $40 million a year. It's quite a bit, and I know that amount of money isn't what it was a few seasons ago. Obviously, with the cap going up, but man, you have one season of decent Geno Smith. He was really good early on. I think he kind of regressed back to closer to what he's been most of his career later in the season. But if you're Geno Smith, bravo! You go from
yeah.
however long you've been in the league, looking like a disappointment, uh, traveling from backup quarterback from city to city, and now you get your shot in Seattle. You do decent, and you get a
And
big
then get
contract.
man, yeah, salute to him because um, it was almost a running joke about how he was just not good, and now all of a sudden he's getting 40 million a year, and that's a testament to him because um, that takes a lot of guts to step in and you know win those games and put those stats up, and especially in that conference, in that division, because
Yeah.
at one point it was the best division in football. So um, yeah, I definitely applaud him. He at the right time he got hot and and got paid. So
Yeah, clearly, if I was the Seahawks, I don't know what they think Geno Smith is going to be. He played out of his mind last year comparatively what he'd been most of his career. I can't imagine he improves on that or even sticks with it.
yeah,
Clearly, not having your franchise quarterback and next year's draft is even better, is even more filled with potential franchise changing quarterbacks. I'm Seattle, knowing don't have a chance to probably don't have a chance to win the division this year. I know San Francisco, who knows who's going to be their starting quarterback, but uh, I think it'd be more likely to tank and try to draft a quarterback next year, but who knows? But let's go from one bad contract to another. I guess depending on who you're asking. Daniel
Right.
Jones signs a 4-year, $160 million contract with the Giants. Again, $40 million isn't what it used to be, but uh, it's he's one of only a few quarterbacks that have been starting to have less touchdown passes than they did games started over the
Right.
last couple of years. I know really it's not a 4-year, $160 million contract. It's only 2 years guaranteed. So if he doesn't pan out, it's really like, I mean, it's still about 80 something $1 million. So you're still paying him 40 million against the cap the next couple of years. But
Yeah.
and Daniel Jones is sort of in the same boat. Not as much as a bust as Geno Smith, although Daniel Jones was the 6th overall pick. But
Yeah.
finally, the Giants come through, make the playoffs. Has one good playoff game, and then just loses to the Eagles. Although he is a pretty good running quarterback, which is weird to say because when you see him, you don't really think, oh, that's, he's okay. But he's able to get in some of these situations to rush a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. He has almost 2,000 yards rushing for his career. So,
Yeah,
uh, yeah.
which is more than Dak in his first few years, and we thought Dak was just gonna uh,
Yeah.
it was gonna be like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Um, I'm happy as a Cowboys fan that he
Yeah,
got that contract because I
yeah.
mean I'm never really worried about Daniel Jones as a fan. Um, he's not a bad quarterback by any means. Maybe
Against the
maybe
Cowboys,
like
he seems to be. I mean, I don't
yeah
know that
yeah
his stats are bad, but his record is not good. But then again, in the
yeah
Dak Prescott era, no NFC East team has
definitely.
anywhere
Well,
near a 500 record against the
Eagles
Cowboys.
don't have it. Yeah. So
The Eagles
yeah.
have the best,
So
but it's like 7-3 against Dak Prescott, maybe 8-3.
yeah. So um, yeah, I'm happy as a Cowboys fan because I've never like I said I've never really worried about Daniel Jones. Um, I mean he's very turnover prone. Coming from a Dak fan from this past year, but for the like holistically, he fumbles the ball. Um, he'll throw a pick. He'll give you one. Um,
He just doesn't
I
take
mean,
over games. He doesn't blow
no,
you away with stats. A lot. I mean, I wouldn't even think he's as good as Eli Manning was. And Eli Manning was, I'm not gonna say lucked into 2 Super Bowls. He played pretty well in those playoff games, but he
right,
was a very average quarterback. If you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, his overall record in the regular season, uh,
right.
he's going to be a Hall of Famer regardless whether you think he should or not. He won 2 Super Bowls and put up a lot of stats and frankly started a lot of consecutive games and had that longevity that
The great,
that a lot of players didn't. So, uh, be it as you may, statistically, I don't think Daniel Jones is as good as Eli Manning. He can run better, and that's about it.
yeah. I don't think he's and saying that early in his career. Um, I just really just don't. Yeah, he's not as good as Eli Manning. It's not even. I don't think it's really close. Really, I like sometimes because I
Eli,
feared Eli
yeah,
because
Eli
he'll
had
go
better
out there.
teams around him though. To
Yeah,
to to
yeah.
be honest, I think they're very much close to being the same type of player. Although Eli didn't wasn't as good as running as I said,
Hmm.
but very average bus driver type quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah. That's hard. That's hard. Like comparing him to a two-time champion. Um,
But
yeah,
is it
but
really? That's Daniel
definitely.
Jones. That's why I think Daniel Jones for this team probably could win a Super Bowl for you if you put the right things around him. But it's the same argument we have in Dallas that when you pay the quarterback that much, it's hard to put talent around him. I'm saying I think Dak
Yeah,
can be the guy, but he's not going to be the guy to take over the game and be a Patrick Mahomes type quarter. Clearly, he's not close to Patrick Mahomes, but he's not going to be the reason you win a Super Bowl. Game to
yeah,
game, he could take over a game, but he's not just going to give you this great stretch of games and be the reason you win the Super Bowl and carry this team.
yeah,
Just like Daniel
yeah,
Jones can't. And when you sign him to that contract, and I realize from the Giants' standpoint, you're kind of stuck in limbo because he's not going to take a lesser contract because he thinks he can get it on the open market. He actually wanted more than that per year. He wanted like 43 or $44 million per year. So your options were sign him to $40 million a year or go without a quarterback for who knows how long, being in quarterback purgatory.
yeah. And it's hard to find a quarterback that's like, you know, I guess competent, like a quarterback that
Yeah.
you won't go out and find unless one's just wants out and a
You're
great.
searching, you're either tanking for a top five pick or you're going after Jimmy Garoppolo,
Yeah, it's like you're
essentially.
gonna find middle of the road quarterback. That's like in Dallas, like whenever they were like, let's go like let's trade that or something like that. I'm like, you won't find a better quarterback because the better quarterbacks are staying where they are for the long term.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes, bro, they're not leaving. So
If you have a better team around him, which is the problem with the Giants, they didn't. Uh,
mhm,
they're getting there. They're a lot better than they have been in past seasons. But
mhm,
Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to help you, and
right,
because the reason he succeeded in New England in San Francisco was because he had a good team around him.
great team. Yeah,
And speaking of Garoppolo, we did notice. I don't know how much we put into this or what it might mean for the draft, but um, the Texans have shown interest in Jimmy Garoppolo. Show that they might be interested. Nothing solid. It's not like they're favorites to sign him or anything like that. But they have said they had interest in him. I don't know what that means in terms of drafting a quarterback. I think they're still gonna stick to their plan and draft a quarterback with the second overall pick if they don't trade up, which we'll get to in a minute because there has been a trade at the number one overall pick. But if they have interest, what are they? I mean, because it's not like they're contenders or close to being contenders and thinking, well, let's just bring in this subpar quarterback and see what we can do with them while we develop somebody else. Uh, I don't know. Do you see Jimmy Garoppolo as one of those if Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes type mentors, where if you draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, I'm pretty sure that's the only two quarterbacks the Texans might draft. But if you draft one of those, that they would sit behind Garoppolo for a year.
yeah. I heard the quarterback from Florida, Richardson. I heard he was up there in the talks too. Um,
I like him. I think his issue is he doesn't have near as many starts as
mhm.
one like Bryce Young. So, but he's an explosive quarterback, and I think it might. I like him better than C.J. Stroud. In
Yeah.
fact, I like Levens a lot better. Not that I would draft him over C.J. Stroud, but off topic here, C.J. Stroud being an Ohio State quarterback, you see him playing with some of the best talent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Ohio State quarterbacks do. That's why you don't see a lot of quarterbacks necessarily come from these big schools because they have all this talent around them. Bryce Young played with a lot of talent, won a Heisman, but then lost a lot of talent and still played very well. So you saw him without that great talent. Levis, on the other hand, Levens, on the other hand, you saw the talent that wasn't around him in Kentucky. He had barely any offensive line, and yet he was still able to make some plays. So that's why I think CJ Stroud moves a little further down on my board, and Levens moves further up. I'm not saying he passes him, but he's in the mix too. But
Yeah.
if I was a Texans and I'm okay with drafting Anderson, is that who we're talking about? Anderson.
Yeah.
And yeah, Florida quarterback. And I would think about trading out of the number 2 spot and trading back a little bit because I think you could get him a little bit later in the draft.
Yeah,
At least
yeah,
stack those picks because I think if that's your target, if Bryce Young's taken, like I said in a minute, we'll talk about the number 1 overall pick being traded. Bryce Young's taken number 1 overall, and you have C.J. Stroud on the board. That's probably who you're going after. And if
mm,
not, just trade back to the number 3 or number 4 spot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Back to the point of would Garoppolo be like a Alex? I would say anywhere but Houston. They're bad. They're not really, they're not really good. That's not really like a good system, at least not right now, anyways.
Yeah, Garoppolo to me is a step above a backup QB. He could
Yeah,
start, be a placeholder for a team that they're kind of there. They're not ready to tank, but they don't have their guy. So let's see if he can kind of duplicate his success in San Francisco and going to the NFC Championship a few times, going to a Super Bowl, seeing what he could do. Just kind of like, hey, let's kick the tires, see if we can get something out of him. But I don't know. I don't think people really look at him as this big quarterback guru. But what did we think of Alex Smith back then?
hmm
Whether Alex Smith had a lot to do with Patrick Mahomes' development, I'm not sure. But uh, like I said, we'll talk about the number 1 overall pick now being traded. The Bears traded it for a few picks to the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Panthers do have a lot of need at quarterback. There have been rumors that the Panthers are going to trade that number 1 pick, pretty much flip it for some extra picks. I'm not sure. I think they're trying to possibly hold the Texans hostage here and see what the Texans can offer because Chicago wasn't going to take a quarterback, not at number 1 anyways.
no, no, I don't think so.
And Carolina, I don't think is trading up to the number 1 spot to take Carter. I think they're going to
hmm
draft a QB. I think a quarterback is going number 1 overall. Depending, it doesn't matter who has that pick. There's a quarterback going. Um, I think Carolina can show, hey, we need a quarterback. We'll take Bryce Young. Now, what do you want us to offer? Because the Bears really couldn't do that. I don't think the Bears were going to have any chance of taking Bryce Young.
Yeah, not with Justin Fields. I don't. Yeah, I don't.
I mean, I'm not a Justin Fields guy. I don't think he's up there where if the Bears happen to put the team around him, I don't know unless he just kind of has that Jalen Hurts jump that Hurts had this year, which I don't see. I don't think there's anything that shows us he might have that. But
I don't think.
I mean, if you are able to put a team around him, it'll take a couple of years, and then you're gonna have to re-sign him. And what are you gonna try to give him $45 million? So personally, I would try to move on from him, but you know, I'm not against them trying to build around, see what they can do, and then maybe move on from him before they have to pay him. Uh, but Carolina, why wouldn't they take a quarterback? Unless they can just get good value for trading that number 1 pick.
Yeah, and then I mean, yeah, they do that and then get rid of your best receiver. So it's like, I don't really. I mean, I get the pick, but I mean,
When you have a top pick like that, just going into some of my philosophies when drafting, as you know, I'm not an NFL GM, so who gives a damn what I say about it? But because of the market and drafting, and re-signing quarterbacks, if you have any success with a quarterback, you're going to have to give them top 5 money.
right.
Uh, I would rather build my team. And you're obviously not going to win with a quarterback, so you're going to have a top 10 pick most years. Build your team and then draft your quarterback and give yourself a quarterback on a rookie deal, surrounded by talent. Um, I'm not a fan of you have a crappy team. Let's just go ahead and sign a quarterback because by the time you get that team built up, now it's time to sign your quarterback to a crazy contract. Now, when you have a top 5 pick, market wise and value wise, it behooves you to take the quarterback every time because of the money you have to pay that rookie. It's never good to take a running back top 5. Hello Zeke. I mean, even though Zeke worked out, but you're paying them a lot of money when paying a quarterback a rookie contract is a lot more valuable for your team than paying a linebacker for that same
Yeah.
amount. And usually, you're probably hitting 50-50. I don't know. I don't have the stats in front of me on how often top quarterbacks like that hit,
Hmm.
but it's if you end up with the franchise changing quarterback, it's worth it. If you don't, okay, you're back in the same position in a few years, so let's draft another quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
So if I was the
Yeah.
Panthers, I think I would trade out of that spot to see if you could flip it for more picks
Yeah.
and
Why
draft
not?
around and maybe go for a quarterback next year because there's going to be better quarterbacks next year, or more quantity goes up in quarterbacks where you could have that potential franchise changing quarterback.
Yeah. And I mean, they'll always kind of have a shot at the playoffs because I mean they're in well, it was the worst division last year in football. So I mean, um, well, granted, you just got Derek Carr in your division, um, but you never know. Just try to see what you can get. Just try
Yeah,
to see what you
Derek
can get.
Carr going from basically the best QB division in football to the worst. I
Yeah,
think that had a lot to do with might have had a lot to do with the decision to go there. And another thing, I mean, I know the Raiders screwed him, but it's always better for the quarterback knowing he wants to go somewhere to not get traded because why would you want to trade or to go to a team who's now losing their draft picks? They can't draft. That's less draft picks for them to help you out. Just another side note. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
rhetorical question. You don't have to go into that if you don't want to.
yes,
But as a Cowboys podcast or local Dallas sports podcast, DFW, last quarterback we're going to talk about is Dak Prescott. Now he's not going anywhere. We know that for sure now. Not that I ever thought he was. Definitely not this year because of his contract. It would just there's no point. There'd be so much dead money. But now they
mhm,
restructure to save some cap space, and we won't get into the details. But basically, Dak's your quarterback for 3 years. There's not a
yeah,
chance unless he retires and tries to save you some money there. There's no point in trying to trade him, cut him. You would have 36, $37 million in dead cap. I'm fine with that. Like I said, I think Dak can be the guy if you put the team around him. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. I don't. Dak Prescott is maybe on his best day the sixth, seventh best quarterback in the league.
yeah,
On his worst, maybe 15th, middle of the road. I mean, I know he looked pretty bad in some of the games last year. Uh, be that as it may, overall, over the course of a season, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback
yeah,
statistically.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. So, all you Dak haters, you're stuck with him, so you have to deal with him regardless. Don't say trade him. I know a lot of people said trade him and get up there and get CJ Stroud. Uh, Even if that would somehow work, you're giving up a lot of capital to put around CJ Stroud, and you're taking a lot of that contract from Dak,
mhm, yeah,
from whoever you trade him to. It just isn't. It just doesn't work. It doesn't behoove the other team to take on that contract. Like I said, next year, I think I mentioned in another podcast. Next year, before they restructured his contract, it might have been possible because there was less dead cap space and you're almost out of that contract. But now they restructured it. No big surprise. The Cowboys have a decent team that could make a Super Bowl run if everything goes right. There's no
yeah,
reason to get rid of a top tier quarterback or one of the top tiers. I'm not going to say top tier, but he
yeah,
certainly moves up when you take Tom Brady out of the top. Is Aaron Rodgers even going to be up there? I would say better chance of Dak Prescott having a better year than Aaron Rodgers this year. So
yeah,
you don't want to go in that quarterback purgatory when you have a chance to win with a really good defense. Uh, Go get a
yeah,
receiver. That's my advice for the Cowboys. Get a receiver.
yeah, for sure.
Well, it was a fun episode talking about what I call the quarterback carousel. There's a lot of changes up at the top there, and we didn't even mention Tom Brady retiring. So, looking at the teams from last year going into this year, it's going to be a big change. Thanks for Chris for being on the sports page. You're always on the sports page. It's not like you're a guest, but yeah, it was fun here recording this episode. Again, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time here on the Peak One Sports Network. See you later, guys.
See you guys.